Assalamualaikum. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. We are blessed with good health, alhamdulillah. And time and opportunity to continue the study of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, study the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All right, we start off with intentions for seeking knowledge and teaching. I intend to seek knowledge and to teach, to benefit myself and to benefit others, to remind myself and to remind others, to profit myself and to profit others, to urge adherence to the book of Allah and the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to invite to guidance and to guide that which is good, seeking the face of Allah, His pleasure, His closeness, and His reward subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alright, continue with our Fatiha. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim. غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم ارزقنا يا ربي فهم النبيين وحفظ المرسلين وإلهام الملائكة المقربين في عافيتي يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم افتح علينا فتوح العارفين وفقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل وهدنا إلى سواء السبيل اللهم انفعنا وارفعنا وعرفنا بالعلم النافع وانفعنا به أنفسنا وأهلنا وأوطاننا وديارنا وجميع المسلمين يا إله العالمين الحمد لله الحمد لله الحمد لله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي Alhamdulillah, we continue with our legacy. We are still with the book Saviors of Islamic Spirit. We are now on to a new personality, Khawaja Nizamuddin Awliya, a Chishtiya order in India. All right, we're going to go a little bit into history just to understand the background of this particular individual. The 6th century of the Islamic era, the 12th century after after Christ, was a period of special significance when a new country, rich in natural and human resources, was being gradually added to the realm of Islam. The country was destined to become in the near future not only the center of Islamic missionary endeavor, but also of its creative, intellectual, and social energies. So here, in the 6th century, that is 600 years after the migration of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Islam entered into a new land rich in resources. In the beginning of the 6th century, the barbarous Tatar legions had swept over the lands of Islam and destroyed, as if by a torrent, great cities, centers of learning and education, mosques and monasteries, as well as every semblance of civilized existence in the countries overrun by them. So this was in the 6th century, right? So this is the time when the Tatars invaded the Muslim land and destroyed much of the civilization of the Islamic world. A lot, in fact, of the monasteries, of the mosques, and the centers of learning. We had our universities then. Remember, we have Nizamuddin in Baghdad and such. Bukhara, Samarkand, Ray, Ramadan, Hamadan, Zanj, Qazwin, Marv, Nishapur, Khawarizm, and then Baghdad, the metropolis of Islam, were reduced to ashes. So they really came down. We saw, we heard, we have gone through the destruction of the Islamic civilization by the Tatars. That's the Mongols, and gone to ashes. The Mongol onslaught eclipsed not only the political ascendancy of Islam in all these lands lying in the West Asia, but also paved the way for its social and intellectual disintegration. So not only were the government destroyed, but the society, social mores, intellectual achievements were all destroyed. Only India, ruled by a strong, vigorous, and zestful Turkish clan, was then able to fend off the assault of the Mongols in this region. All right, so now you see India coming in. They were under the Turks, the Turkish clan, some kinds of group, right? And the Mongols came in, and the Mongols could not defeat them. In the Islamic world, only they possessed the prowess as well as religious zeal, which made them a match or perhaps superior to their adversaries. And somehow we see that when they keep on, they hold on to the teachings of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, they have some kind of power that Allah blessed them with, and they were superior, in that sense, superior to the Tatars or the Mongols. The Mongol made repeated assaults, but were always repulsed. During the reign of Alauddin bin Khilji alone, they advanced 5 times against India, but were beaten back first in 696 after Hijrah, and then on the occasion of their 4th and 5th attacks, Malik Ghazi Tughlaq fought so bravely and inflicted such crushing defeats on the Mongol that, in the words of a historian, dejected and disheartened, they gave up their attempts to conquer India as a forlorn hope. So they decided to give up on India. Waves after waves of refugees, many of whom were men of culture and religion, wended their way to the safety of India from Iran, Pakistan, and Iraq, which soon made Delhi vie with Cordova and Baghdad. So people of many attainments, many scholarly prowess, scholarly achievements have come down, right, to Delhi. So Delhi became a center of learning, right? So it vie with Cordova and Baghdad. At one time, Cordova was a center of learning, and Baghdad also was a center of learning. Now, the Tatars has destroyed Baghdad, not Cordova. They didn't go so far. They just went up until Syria, and as we saw, right, they didn't even go into Egypt. They were just Baghdad and Syria and maybe Turkey. Even some of the smaller towns and suburban centers in India rivaled thanks to the convergence of numerous learned personages, such reputed centers of learning as Shiraz and Yaman, from such. So they came from all these places, these learned people, they were refugees because their places were being destroyed by the Tatars, and they saw India as a place of refuge, a place of great learning, and a place of safety, right, for them to continue with their work and their learnings and their teachings. The historians of the time, like Ziauddin Barni and others, have listed the names of hundreds of such persons belonging to rank and nobility, learned doctors, men of letters, and renowned mystics who had migrated to India owing to Mongol depredations. So the destruction caused by the Mongols has caused them to move to other places. This is part of life, part of history. We see this happening again and again and again in the later years, where when countries are invaded, where countries are being ruled by dictators, the elites would move out, and they would bring along their knowledge to other parts of the world. Soon after their arrival in India, they took up posts of responsibility under the then administration, or engaged themselves in teaching and preaching. So they were an asset to these places because they had the expertise and knowledge, right, to even go into government posts, and of course they continue teaching and preaching. It seems as the analysts report, that India had then inherited the entire intellectual patrimony of the Islamic world. So since a number of them actually went to India, and India now is the stronghold of Islamic learning. These circumstances contributed not only to the development of India's creative genius, but also pointed out its future role that it assumed not long after as a center of social and cultural, religious, intellectual activities in the world of Islam for many centuries to come. Yes, we see that those of us who have learned the history of India, right? They would see how Islam had brought in great cultures, great learnings, and great social mores to India. Alhamdulillah, but we'll see what's happening right now. It's not really very good for the Muslims in India. There is a movement to remove the Muslims and throw them out of India, and somehow using the conquest of the Muslims of India as a reason to instigate the Hindus against the Muslims. Of course, they would pick up some isolated incidences, right, which with some of the rulers which were not good. But then again, as we know, some of the stories are further exaggerated, right, to incite hatred against the Muslims. Sadly so, we pray for them. The builders of Islamic India. The discovery of India by the sons of Islam was in no way less momentous than the discovery of America by the West. So that's how he compared. He compared the discovery of India to the discovery of America. Muslim adventurers had begun to push their way to India in the first century of Islamic era. So the Muslims were not just there. I mean, it wasn't in the 7th century. This is already the 7th century. The Muslims have traveled. We know that Islam, part of our Islamic culture is to propagate our religion, and Muslims have traveled to China. Muslims have traveled to India to bring the religion, but that was not under conquest, but more of missionary work. After Muhammad ibn Qasim Thaqafi had captured the land lying between Sindh and Multan in 993 after Hijrah, so that's in the 100th century, right? Numerous cloisters, and 10th century, is it? 10th century. So. But 10th century, not even this is the first few years of the Hijrah. Numerous is the first century, like 100 years, the first century. Numerous, like the end of the first century. Numerous cloisters and monasteries of Muslim saints and Sufis has sprung up like heavenly lights in the gloom of surrounding polytheism and ignorance. So Islam brought the religion very early in the first century of the Islamic era. But it was really Mahmud al-Ghazni of Ghazni, all right, 421 after Hijrah, so that's the 5th century, who carried the Muslim arms with unvarying success to India, and Shahabuddin Muhammad Ghori, that's later on in the early 7th century, who firmly planted the standard of crescent in this country. So it took a much more, Muhammad Qasim ibn Qasim was in the 1st century, then came Mahmud al-Ghazni in the 5th century, and finally we have Muhammad Ghori, who established Islam in the early 7th century. Likewise, the heaven had preordained the spiritual conquest of India to the lot of great mystic saints, Sheikhul Islam Moinuddin Chisti. So this is the name of the person that we are looking into. Long before the Muslim conquest of India, all the 4 mystic orders in Islam, visually Qadiriyya, Chistiyya, Naqshbandiyya, and Shurawadiyya, has already come into existence. All right, now what are these names here? Some of you might be familiar with these names. Some of you are not familiar with these names. So these are names of groups of tariqat. And tariqat means those who follow a certain path. Yeah, there are Muslims, of course, they have got they follow some of them. They follow the different four mazhabs, but this is the order. They call it the order of path of getting closer to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. The Sufi orders, all right, of purifying their hearts and being people of great fortitude, of great learning, and of great spiritual attainment. So they have the Qadariya order, they've got the Chistiya order. These are all they have their own ways of doing things, all right, and Naqshbandiya order and the Shurahwadi order. All of them originate from very, very knowledgeable awliyas of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Each of these had shared the regeneration of Islam in India, but Allah's will had selected the Chistiya order for providing spiritual nourishment to the nascent sapling of the faith in this country. So he's saying that the one that is most popular in India is Chistiya order. The Chisti is a group of people who are known, right, to have, as mentioned, they have their own ways of approaching Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. They do. It's not that they pray 5 times. All these are standard there, but they increase on their amals to get closer to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, to purify their hearts. They've got certain sets of zikrs that they do daily. So Islam is just a sapling in India. So it was nourished by the Chistiya order. Your Rabb brings to pass what He wills and chooses. This is Surah Allah. Surah, I forgot to put the surah here. Surah 28, 60, verse 68. This is where Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala reminds us that Allah will, whatever Allah creates, Allah decides. Whatever Allah wants, He will happen. So Allah has allowed for the Chisti order to plant itself in India. Ways of Allah are inscrutable, indeed. But it appears that the Chistiya order engaged in enkindling the flame of the divine love in the hearts of the people in the adjoining land of Iran, was bound by a neighborly obligation to India. So here what they are saying is that this order, this is a way, as I said, the ways of Allah are inscrutable. That means you cannot scrutinize various ways. They form different ways of approaching Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, purifying themselves. But the Chistiya order, right, mostly engage in enkindling the flame of the divine love. It's very important for us to have this great love for Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala in our hearts. That kind of love for Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala will push us to do lots of amal, to do lots of zikr, to be in connection with Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And it started in Iran. Yeah, I need to research was today. I don't have that kind of research. I'll go into it and explain what they are all about. All right. So they started from Iran, you can see that, and then they move on to India, as we can see. All right. History. There was no Pakistan then. India, so Iran is actually beside Pakistan, not really direct to India as we know now. All right, India and Pakistan is one big Indian subcontinent, as we call them, and Iran would be just beside India at that time. So they actually moved into India to bring this religious movement into Islamic movement into India. It was but easier as well as incumbent on it to win over the inhabitants of India who have ever been willing to acknowledge the message of love and devotion to the Rabb. So it was easy and it was necessary, right, to win over the inhabitants of India. Actually, for India, one of the reasons, of course, not the only reason, one of the reasons that it was easier for some of the Hindus to move into Islam, especially among the lower castes, because Islam doesn't have castes. Maybe among the Brahmin, a bit more difficult for them to move into Islam. You've got the Kshatriyas and the Parias, you know. So the lowest rank, the last two rank, they got four castes groups, I think. I can't remember. I used to remember them when I was in school. All right, anyway, we learned that in history. So the last two groups would actually, quite a lot of them actually moved into Islam. For whatever reasons, the Providence had selected the Chistiya order for disseminating the religion of peace in Islam. In India, one of the Chisti Sheikhs, Khawaja Abu Muhammad Chisti, turned the direction of his effort towards Islam. Khawaja is a title given to them, right, as an honorary title to honor them for their great achievement in bringing in the religion of Islam. All right. It is related to the campaigns of Muhammad al-Ghazni owed their success to his blessings. It's related to the campaigns of Muhammad al-Ghazni. So we saw Muhammad al-Ghazni somewhere in the early 5th century, right? So these conquerors, it seems that they have a link to the various awliyas of Allah at that time. And there is a need for, they would always consult the awliyas, or the awliyas will be the friends of Allah, the wali Allah, and the awliya is plural of wali, right? Wali Allah are those who are very connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they make lots of du'as for these people. They actually would ask them to make du'as on their behalf. Maulana Jami' writes in Nufhatul Uns, when Mahmud had already left for Somnath, Khawaja Abu Muhammad received the divine summons to join the expedition. So it's not that he has a revelation, but we know that they have firasat, they have firasat and karama. These awliyas of Allah, the wali Allah, they have what they call it, intuition, right, to join the expedition. Although he wasn't 70 years of age, he joined the campaign with a retinue of his followers. So he brought along his followers, right, to join the campaign. When they call it a campaign, expedition campaign, this is actually a battle and to remove undesirable elements in the countries that they would go to. All right, Khawaja Muinuddin Chisti. Khawaja Muinuddin belonged to Sajastan in Iran. It is why quite a number of Indians have a Persian origin, because the Persians went over to India to bring Islam. Persian, Iran is Persia. Some of the older historians, including Qazi Minhajuddin Uthman Jawzajani, a contemporary of Khawaja Muinuddin bin Chisti and author of the Tabaqat al-Nasir, asserts that the Khawaja accompanied Sultan Shahabuddin of Ghor, better known to history as Muhammad Ghori, when he gave battle to Prithviraj and defeated him finally at Tarin. So this is a king, of Indian king, which a Muslim general, Muhammad Ghori, Muslim leader, right, attacked and defeated him at Tarin. The analysis of the period relate that invocation of divine blessings by the Khawaja was responsible for the spectacular success achieved by Muhammad Ghori against his foe. So then here again we see that the various the connection with the walis of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they make lots of du'as. And we are aware also, and we are known, we are informed, right, that in this world there exists at least 40 awliyas, wali Allah, at any point in time. And they are called, that is why in Syria, there is a place called the Arbaeen, actually. It's up a hill, you've got to climb up and stairs and everything. And if you go up to this place, some people might not believe in it, but if above, there's one cave down there, which was supposed to be the cave, a cave which was very upset when the two sons of Nabi Adam fought and one killed the other. Above that, there's a place, a mosque kind of place, where there are 40 what do you call it, mihrab, like a niche, prayer niche, and this 40 prayer niche supposed to represent, or supposed to be the prayer niches of the 40 saints present in the world at any one time. It is said that the du'as of the saints are the one that keeps the world in good state. because the saints are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And their presence and their du'as have allowed for rain to come, and has prevented many disasters from occurring. So these are people close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whose du'as Allah accept. And as mentioned by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Hadith, it says that those people who perform the wajib acts and they add on with the sunnah acts, and whenever they ask, Allah will always accept their du'as. Sunnah acts, these people, they are very we can't compete with them. There's just we don't talk about competition. There's no way we can compete with all these kind of people. Are very, very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's just time is not wasted at all doing things which are just nonsensical. Yeah, they are awliya kutub. It's the 40s what it is. So that they are the very high ranking awliyas of the world. We don't know who they are. They are around us. Could be one in Singapore. Nobody knows. And as mentioned, they pray like sleep 2-3 hours a day. They can even read the Quran, finish the Quran. Some of them can even do it in one day. I don't know how they do it, but it is, of course, if you think about time, right, it is, of course, divine time. Allah has given them special blessings in their times. Common for them is 3 days. 3 days finish the Quran. And they do slawats, like 5,000 slawats a day. Like for us, our time is so confined time to even do a little bit of zikir after our prayers. Right? So they are different, definitely different from us. And that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they put in their life is all about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah accepts it to us. All right. The writings of the later historians, however, show that Khawaja Mu'inuddin had arrived in India and taken up his residence at Ajmer in the early initial period of Muhammad Ghori's Indian expeditions, extending from 571 after Hijrah to 602 Hijrah. So it seems that he was there already. Then he joined the expedition of Muhammad Ghori. Ajmer was then the capital of the imperial Chauhan kings of northern India, as well as a celebrated place of pilgrimage. So pilgrimage for the Hindus. Ajmer is still, if you all are aware, are familiar with towns in India, Ajmer is the main town of the Sikhs, and the Sikhs which go there to Ajmer for pilgrimage. Prithviraj Chauhan, we heard of this name just now, right? Who was defeated by our Muslim general. Prithviraj, 571 to 588, was a son of Someshwara, the only surviving son of Anuraj and the brother of Vigraj. All these are Hindus, Vigraharaj, also known as Bisaldio. Anuraj is considered to be the founder of the Chauhan kingdom of Ajmer. Sameshwara is said to have wielded an equal opportunity over both the Chauhan court of Ajmer and the Tomar court of Delhi. So you can see Sameshwara was the son of Anuraj, right? So Anuraj was the founder of the kingdom, but Sameshwara conquered more and had Delhi and Ajmer for him. Having been married to the daughter of the last Tomar ruler of Delhi, so that's how he got over the Tomar, because he married the daughter of the ruler Ahanpal. His son Prithviraj claimed lineage and relationship with the Tomar branch of the Rajput. So that's how they conquered two branches, right, of the Tomar and the Chauhan here. Since Anandpal was issueless, that means no child, he had adopted Prithviraj as his son and successor. So that's how Prithviraj conquered both, ended up with both these two places. Thus, he succeeded in due course to the two powerful Rajput kingdoms of Delhi and Ajmer. Brave and courageous, he had shown his valor in numerous campaigns against the surrounding Rajput kingdom. So there are a few kingdoms all over the place, right, ununited, and they were always having fights with each other. His famous abduction of Jai Chand's daughter from Kanauj during the course of Soimba made him the hero of Prithviraj Raisa, a great epic by the graphic pen of Chand Bardif, and which is still popular in the northern India. So this is just a little bit of history of this man, Prithviraj. However, it seems history has not forgiven him for his final defeat against Muhammad Ghori and condemned him as an inglorious sovereign despite his valor and adventurous campaigns. That's what it is, right? All the good that you do, because of one bad thing, you are condemned. All right. That's life. That's human. In the late 586 to 587 after Hijrah, Muhammad Ghori was defeated by Prithviraj at Tarain, now known as Tilondi, 14 miles from Tanisa. In late 588 after Hijrah, Muhammad Ghori set out with an army of 1,20,000 select horsemen to avenge the defeat. Prithviraj advanced with 3 lakh horses and 3,000 elephants to meet the enemy. So it's a very huge battle. Lakh is 1,000,000, I think, because 1,000 is already here. All right, the immense array of horses and foot was marshaled under the foremost princes of Hindustan. A great fight ensued. The Rajputs fought bravely, but at last Prithviraj was slain with the best and the bravest of the Rajputs. That means all of the Rajput princes died together with Prithviraj. This also signaled the end of the independent Rajput kingdoms in India. So Islam took over India, northern India. Years before the Battle of Tarain ended the sovereignty of the Chauhans in 588 after Hijrah, as some chronicles claim, an incident had sealed the fate of proud and independent Ajmer. Prithviraj is said to have treated unjustly a Muslim, perhaps one of his courtiers. When the Khawaja interceded on behalf of the aggrieved man, Prithviraj contemptuously replied, "Since the time this man has come here, he is indulging in tall talk, never experienced or heard before by anybody." So somehow this man, right, came to India and he's been talking about Islam and all kinds of things about the religion of Islam, which they have not heard before, and they find it something that is out of the world, that cannot be believed in. The Khawaja, on hearing the reply of Prithviraj, calmly said, "We have handed over Prithviraj alive and in chains to Muhammad Ghori." So he predicted the defeat of Prithviraj. It was not long after this incident that the proud Chauhan was attacked and defeated by Muhammad Ghori. So that was how Islam came into India, or conquered, made a stronghold into India, removed all the Rajput kingdoms, the small kingdoms. All of them lost despite putting up a very brave fight and a big army against the Muslim army. But alhamdulillah, right, we can see by the du'as of our various scholars, they won. The saint and preacher, whatever may have been the sequence of events narrated by the historians, there is hardly any doubt that Khawaja Moinuddin had selected Ajmer as a center for propagating Islam and radiating the message of love and spirituality, sometimes in between the campaigns of Muhammad Ghori, but before the latter had established his stronghold in that political and religious center of medieval in India. So he has done it. He was already there. He has established himself in Ajmer, and of course, in between with the Muhammad Ghori coming in. So he made du'as for them that Islam get established in Ajmer. Khawaja's decision bespeaks of his courage, determination, and unflinching trust in Allah, which are the hallmarks of great conquerors and founders of religion. So to be a conqueror in Islam, to be a founder of religion, you need to have courage. You need to have determination, and you need to have full trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His determined efforts, coupled with his sincerity, reliance on Allah, and ennobling sacrifice for his cause, turned the country, steeped the darkness of idolatry for thousands of years, into a land of religious scholars and saints, and made it a repository of religious knowledge and spiritual attainment. So this man, he was instrumental in bringing Islam, bringing the people, the Hindus, many of the Hindus who converted to Islam, right? And the religion of Islam thrived in the northern, mainly in the northern and the central part of India. It was because of him that every part of this great country began to resound soon with the calls of Allahu Akbar, and was filled with the love songs of the Quran and Hadith to the envy of the entire world of Islam. Verily, the world was moved by an illuminated soul. The author of Si'arul Awliya has correctly summed up the contribution of Khawaja Moinuddin in these words: Hindustan is India, to the end of his father's southern limits was a land of pagans and polytheists. They are all idol worshippers, the Hindus. Whoever held power made the claim, "I am the Lord Most High." So they always these polytheists, these pagans, right? The kings always assume themselves as the god somehow. That is why in the different towns of India, you will have different gods. Inhabitants of the land make almost every object and being a partaker of divinity. Everything becomes divine. Everything that seems to be good becomes divine. Like the cow also is divine, the elephant is divine, even the monkey is divine in some sense. Hanuman down there, these are all history of India, Hindu. Stocks and stones, trees and beasts, cow and cow dung were the things before which they prostrated. They actually prayed to all this. Darkened by the gloom of infidelity, their hearts had been securely sealed. All were strangers to the faith in Allah and His ordinances, the Rabb of the worlds and His apostles. Neither anybody knew the true direction of Allah's religion, nor had anyone heard the call of Allahu Akbar. The moment Khawaja Moinuddin set his foot on this land, the dreariness of paganism gave way to the brightness of Islam. So that was his achievement. He brought Islam, and people changed from being pagans, from being polytheistic, to believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thanks to his efforts and blessings, the relics of fetishism were replaced by the pulpits, the niche and the arch, and the lands ringing with the sound of idolatrous cults were filled with the cries of Allahu Akbar. Whoever would be blessed with true faith in Allah in this country, and whosoever shall partake this wealth in the day of reckoning, and their progeny, as well as all of those who will extend the bounds of true faith in this land, shall go on increasing the merits and reward of Shaykh al-Muhyiddin Hassan Sajjad. What he's saying is that being the one who bring Islam, being the one who make people change their beliefs from being polytheistic to being monotheistic, calling on the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, aggrandizing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From the time he brought Islam to all those people who converted under him and his disciples, right? After that, on, their descendants who are practicing Islam, practicing the beliefs that was brought in, all the rewards will go to him because he was the originator of the original one, the first one to bring Islam to India, or to really push for the spread of Islam in India. Another chronicler, Ghulam Ali Azad, writes in Ma'athar al-Kiram, there is not the least doubt that the spiritual mentors of Chistiya order have a rightful claim on India. They were the ones who spread in Islam in India. The author of Si'a'ur Aqtab says the blessed footsteps of Mu'inuddin dispelled the gloom of infidelity in the land and led to propagation of Islam. During the lifetime of Khawaja Mu'inuddin Chisti, the political capital of the land was transferred from Ajmer to Delhi. Ajmer consequently lost much of its prominence, but the Khawaja remained at Ajmer and sent his disciple and spiritual successor, Khawaja Kutubuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki, to deputize for him at the capital. He gave himself up during the remainder of his life to prayer and meditation, teaching his disciples to govern their conduct according to the principles of the Sharia and preaching the message of Islam to others. So he appointed a successor, right, and sent a successor to Delhi. He stayed on in Ajmer to continue. So he gave himself up. That means for the rest of his life after that, he just devoted himself to prayer, meditation, teaching his disciples to govern their conduct. Akhlaq is very important. Akhlaq is very important. When you don't behave well, Islam gets a bad name. And that is why Rasulullah has said that he was sent to perfect akhlaq. And that is why when our akhlaq is not good, we get angry easily, we shout, we scream, we can't control ourselves. That is showing that we lack that akhlaq that Rasulullah has brought to us. And Rasulullah has taught us to hold ourselves, to be in whatever state a true Muslim will hold himself. And that is of the great akhlaq from Rasulullah. So the akhlaq is according to the principles of the Sharia and preaching the message of Islam to others. So that is what he did, right? Ensure that they have good akhlaq, and he continued preaching the message of Islam to the Indian people. None of the numerous memoirs and biographies mention the details of his missionary activities, except that his efforts were crowned with success, and a vast multitude entered the fold of Islam on account of him. So there was not much, actually, details on his activities, missionary work, but definitely his efforts have brought success, and multitudes entered the fold of Islam on account of him, because of him. In the words of Abul Fadl, he took up his residence at Ajmer, where he spread the light of faith, and because of his sublime life and preaching, legions of the legions of people embraced Islam. Legions of the legions of people, these groups and groups and groups and groups of people became Muslim. Why? Because of his character, because of his good life. They see him, they see his sincerity, and of course, with sincerity, of course, there's always struggles. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help, right, them to be successful. Such was then the mission of Khawaja, to which he devoted himself for 50 years till his death at the age of 90 years in 627 after Hijrah. And this is the Hijrah years, 90 years. Khawaja Qutbuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki had by then established himself firmly at Delhi, where he was engaged like his mentor in revivifying and illuminating the hearts of a vast multitude of people. So he sent, as we remember, this person here, Qutbuddin, was the successor of Moinuddin, and he was sent to Delhi. So he does the work that his master has trained him to do, like his mentor, right? He revived the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the knowing Allah, right? Illuminate the hearts of people. The then Sultan of Delhi, Shamsuddin Iltutmish, was also a devotee of the Khawaja, whose moderating influence led the Sultan to dispense justice with an even hand and strengthen the roots of Islam in India. So when they see these kings being fair, being kind, being gracious, they see a lot of difference between these Muslim kings, and the Indian kings, the Rajput kings, were always fighting with each other and fighting for their own selves, not for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All right, so that's a little bit of history of Khawaja. We'll continue with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I do not have the page, which is lost. All right, we're gonna recall, we did a little bit of Hadith 10. Al-haya'u min al-iman. Shame is of iman. Now, what is shame? And Abi Mas'ud, from Abi Mas'ud, Uqbata ibn Amrin, right? Al-Ansari Badri, that's his total name, right? Radiallahu anhu, qala, he said, qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, inna mimma adraka nasu min kalamin nubuwatil ula. Surely of what is being taught, is being explained to mankind of the words of the prophets, right? Early prophets, idha lam tastahi, when not you have any shame, fasna, then do ma shikta, whatever you wish. So this is a hadith, right? But this is not only from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying that it is from the prophets of old. All the prophets of old has mentioned this. If you don't have shame, then do whatever you want to do. So it's a very short hadith, right? If you don't have shame, idha lam tastahi fasna ma shita, then do whatever you want to do. Rawahul Bukhari. So it's from Bukhari. All right, we've gone through the words, we've gone through the importance of the hadith in the last lesson. Now we're going to go on through the legal matters and other guidance from the hadith. So as we are aware, this book that we are learning, this book Wafi, right, is a commentary on the hadith that was Hadith of Imam Nawawi, and he looks into it and dwell into it and extended on the various things. All right, the legacy of the prophets. Shame is the foundation of noble manners. So legacy, as mentioned in this particular hadith, it is from the words of the prophets of Allah. So that is why it's called the legacy of the prophets. Shame is a foundation of noble manners, the strongest motive for doing good and avoiding evil. So to have shame, it is the foundation of noble manners. If you don't have shame, then you would not be able to build on noble manners or noble characters. All right, so first, it is a foundation of noble manners. It is the strongest motive for doing good. Because you have shame, you will be pushed to do good and you will be pushed to avoid evil. And thus, it is a part of the legacy of earlier prophets. And because of that, it is the legacy of the earlier prophets. Because all the earlier prophets, all the prophets, of course, right, are people of noble manners. Because they have shame, right, they have noble manners. And because they have shame, they are people who desire to do good at all times and they avoid evil because of their shame that they have. And has never been abrogated from their revealed laws. That means this particular idea, this particular concept, this particular legacy of the earlier prophets has never been removed from the revealed law. This is present in all the revealed laws. That means laws which are sent down by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has this idea of shame as the crux of the beliefs of all the prophets. People have passed it on among themselves and inherited it successively from the messengers generation after generation. Right? So it has been inherited, this idea of shame. It is passed on and on and on and on and on, even without the presence of the messengers. It is being passed on generation after generation. It became widespread and people clung to it until it reached its Muslim ummah. So even though they might not have, different communities have got different sense of shame, all right, and stops them from doing a lot of evil things, might not be having some kind of religious foundation. But of course, with the religious foundation and rulings, we are brought closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If our ummah is upon the clear legacy of all the prophets and messengers, alayhimussalam, as Allah, the Most High, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the all-powerful has willed, and as it is clear in the noble Quran that it is our obligation to cling to the shame that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted us and to adorn ourselves with it and be characterized by it. So he's saying that because the shame is legacy of all the prophets, right? And Allah has blessed us with the Quran. So it is our obligation to have shame, sense of shame. Allah has granted us with the sense of shame because it is the legacy of the prophets and we are the inheritors of the prophets. And we should adorn ourselves with this sense of shame and we should be characterized by it. This is so that the legacy of the prophets remains manifest within us and life and people prosper in goodness and truth until Allah inherits the earth and everyone on it. So the legacy of the prophet, by having the sense of shame, the legacy of the prophets will be with us. And the life and people will prosper in goodness and truth. So because of shame, our life will be prosperous. Because of shame, people will become prosperous. We only prosper with goodness. We do not prosper with evil. We prosper with truth. We do not prosper with falsehood. Until Allah inherits the earth and everyone on it, which means until the day of resurrection. Because in the day of resurrection, nobody owns anything. Everything belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, right now, also everything belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there are ownership in some form of the people. The meaning of the hadith. Our revered scholars have mentioned 3 meanings for this hadith, which we shall clarify as follows. The first meaning is that it is a command bearing the meaning of a threat. As if he is saying, if you do not have any shame, do what you want and Allah will punish you for it most severely. So because it says, right, shame is part of Islam. If you don't have shame, then do whatever you want. So if we don't have any shame, because shame is the one that protects us from doing evil. Shame is the one that pushes us to do good all the time. So if we don't have shame, then do what you want, and Allah will punish you. So this is an additional, it is an applied, we can imply from the statement, which is, if you do not have any shame, do what you want, that it is a threat. You do whatever you want, do lah, whatever you want to do. Wait for the consequences of your action. That's what it is. So Allah will punish you for it most severe. This type of command is in the Holy Quran when Allah addresses the disbelievers. Right? This occurs, when they are so adamant, they fought against the prophets, they were so arrogant, they were so stubborn, and then the time comes when the prophets will also say this: do whatever you do, we will do what we will do. That means you go and do whatever nonsense you want to do, whatever sinful things you want to do. We will continue being true slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So do what you like. I'malu ma syi'tum, fussilat, verse 40. The second meaning, there's the first meaning, it's a threat, is that it is a command bearing the meaning of informing, similar to his statement, let him take his seat in the fire. That is, he has taken his seat, which means that by not having shame, he has done actions which cause him to reserve a place in hellfire. That's the meaning of the hadith, is that whoever does not have shame does whatever they want, because it is shame that prevents people from committing shameful acts. Whoever has no shame will be engrossed in every wrong and every abomination. So that is why you have reserved your seat. By not having shame, you have reserved a seat in hellfire. Because by not having shame, you will commit all kinds of acts of indecencies, all kinds of sinful acts, shameless acts that will cause you to enter fire, which means you have booked yourself a place in fire. Third meaning is that it is a command bearing the meaning of permissibility. And thus the meaning is that if you are not ashamed to do something, neither before Allah nor in front of people, then do it, as it is permissible. Right? It becomes permissible on you because you have no shame, not that you're going to be rewarded for it. Right? You have no shame. Because of that, you have made yourself permissible to do things which are shameless. This is because if an action is not prohibited in the revealed law, it is permissible. The preferred meaning is the first. All right. So this is another meaning, that it is, if there's nothing in it, all right, that there's nothing to prohibit you, then you can do whatever you want to do, right? Because it is not part of a shameless act. They say that the preferred meaning is the first. So the first is a threat. The second, right, is a command that causes you to have booked yourself in hellfire. And the third is that if it is not of the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not forbidden, then you are allowed to do it. Right? So even though Imam Nawawi preferred the third meaning, that means that if it is not disallowed, then it is permitted. All right. Abu Ubaid al-Qasim, Ibn Salam, Ibn Qutayba, and Muhammad ibn Nasr al-Marwazi preferred the second meaning. So the preferred meaning is the first. But Imam Nawawi preferred the third meaning. And these other scholars preferred the second. All right, we look at it. We look at shame. Shame is of two types. The first type is natural. It is part of someone's disposition and character and not acquired. So it is part of you. You have this sense of shame. And it is not something acquired. And whoever is characterized by them ascends the noblest of manners, which Allah grants to one of his slaves and endows him with them. So there are people who are naturally having this sense of shame, right? They would do acts of good and bad. They feel ashamed that Allah looks on at them, and they do not do the best. They will do their best. And this is the Muhsin. The Muhsin are those who will do their best in whatever is asked of them, because they know Allah looks on. And they will never do any acts of evil because they are so ashamed to do anything wrong, to disobey Allah, because they know Allah looks on. The one endowed with shame refrains from disobedience, shameful acts, and vile character. This is why shame is a source of good and one of the branches of faith. He said, shame is a branch of faith. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All right, we just finished this. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is more modest than a virgin al-adrah behind her curtain. Virgins, they are shy. This is the true virgins. They are shy. They won't show themselves. They hide themselves behind the curtain. Right? It's the true virgins. It has been written for Omar that he said, whoever has shame hides. Whoever hides has taqwa. Whoever has taqwa is protected. So he hides from, he doesn't want to show anything that's bad. And because he has taqwa, that is why he hides. And because he has taqwa, he is protected. So those with shame will be protected. All right, we'll stop here. Take a short break.
I saw you.
So we continue with
Spirit has no limits. When the Lord speaks, you submit. Sami'na wa ata'na, we hear and we obey. But what the angels are bowing down to is not his Adam, the name Adam. They say it comes from Adim al-Ard, which is like the surface of the earth, clay. Khalaqahu min turab. Adam created of clay, the lower thing. But they're not bowing down to that. They're bowing down to the eternal spirit. So from a very early age, Shah Baha'u'ddin is aware of this. And because this upper part of us, the true part of us, the real insaniyat, the real thing that makes us human beings, the bird that wants to fly, to leave the cage, because that part of us remembers, it doesn't just want to go to the principle of beauty and light, it wants to go back to the principle of beauty and light. Some of you will understand the Farsi. We were born to be companions of the angels. We were in the spheres. Let's go there again, friend, because that's where we belong. An Shahri Must. That's our city, not this world of clay and brokenness. Our real home is with all of humanity at the day of Alastu bi Rabbikum, and that was a time of collectivity. We all said it together. Bala Shahidna, we bear witness, all of human beings. So part of the way of Shah Baha'u'ddin is that you see that every human being is your brother or your sister. In that ancestral pure time, they were all saying it. And because of problems of upbringing or whatever, they may not remember the way you do. But still, your brother and your sister, all from Adam in the Turab, but also from the Ruzi Mahshar, from the Ruzi Alastu bi Rabbikum, the day of Am I not your Lord, and the day of the end of time, all humanity will be together. This is an important principle for him. So much of his story is about mysterious events. And this disclosure of the unity of human beings and the primordial love of the Creator is identified by his biographers with a very strange event in his life. We know that as a Faqir, Darvish, he went through all kinds of difficult experiences. One of the experiences was one of his teachers told him, you have to remove nafs, ego. That's the only problem any human being has, nafs. The Holy Prophet says, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, a'da aduwika nafsuka allati bayna janbayk. Your greatest enemy is the ego which is between your two sides. Not this person or that neighbor or this country, no, in here. And that's the mark of the real believer, that he points the finger of blame not at others but at himself. And one of the things that were disclosed to Naqshband Hazrat was the meaning of the 77 branches of faith. You know, the famous hadith that Iman has 77 shu'bah, has 77 branches. A'laha shahadat an la ilaha illallah. The highest is the shahada, there is no God but Allah. وأدناها إزالة الأذى عن الطريق. And the lowest is removing some obstacle from the road. So you're on the road and you see that there's something's fallen from another vehicle, and you stop your car and you get out and you move it. That's a kind of basic human thing. It's not for you, you've seen it, but it's for human solidarity with some unknown person. And the understanding that the Sada Naqshbandiya have of this is that this includes the real adha. What is the real adha, the real harm, the real obstacle on the way? It's the ego. The basis of everything has to be to remove this obstacle that is within ourselves. Otherwise, this path will be closed to us. So many of the things that he had to do in his youth as a young man, when he wanted to be as a young person, well, in the world, embracing the world, enjoying the world, being amazed by the world, tasting its sweetness, that's not a wrong thing. So for him and for the people of his way, the obstacle on the road, the adha tariq, is the ego, the self, the thing that says me, and that forgets that at the time when we all saw the Creator, Rabb al-Alameen, at the Rosy Alast, we were not looking at our egos. How can you when you're in the presence of the one who is totality, infinity, perfection? There's no possibility of claiming anything for yourself in that situation. So we remove the obstacle from the path, from our path, but also the paths of others. This is a way of service, a way of giving. And it was a hard experience for him, and very few people nowadays could carry that kind of revendegan, that wayfaring, suluk. But what supports it with these people is love, ashq, passionate love of the Creator. When we said shahidna, we bear witness, this witnessing is what we are invited to do in this world whenever we are confronted with anything. And some things are easier than others. There is beauty. Naturally, we are inclined to see the divine source in beauty. Sometimes there are things which are not Jamal, but which are Jalal, and seeing the divine in those is harder. That's a higher degree. The highest degree is to see the divine presence in everything, of the essence, but the God of the attributes in all things. And therefore to love it, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Yar, He's the beloved friend. But in order to reach this, that ego, that spider, that insect within us has to be squeezed out and stamped on, that cockroach in the soul. The story of how he was once walking through the streets of Bukhara at night, very poor, barefoot, cold day, in one leather garment that he had. And he wanted to go and see his teacher, Amir Kulal. And he got to his house and he saw inside his teacher with some friends, and they were having a nice gathering. But the Sheikh wouldn't let him in, told him to go away. So great in his heart was his love for the Sheikh that he recognized the cockroach within was saying, I've been offended. This is discourtesy. I have the right to go in. And he realized that this was a battle, part of that endless battle, the jihad and nafs. And so he settled on the doorstep of his Sheikh and just waited, watching his heart, this muraqabah, waiting for that insect to die away. So there was complete acceptance of this situation. And it started to snow. And his bones started to get cold. And his feet were wounded. He'd been stepping on stones and thorns. Difficult situation. But out of his love for his Sheikh, he put his head on the threshold of his door. And he spent the night like that, in a state of love for his Sheikh. And in the morning, the Sheikh opened the door and went out, and it was dark still, but he felt his foot on something, and it was the head, of course, of Naqshband Hazrat, that he realized. He brought him into the house, and he embraced him, and he gave him the good news of a great future in spreading truth, light, mercy, healing to humanity. Difficult. Who can carry that? But the importance of this is every day, in every moment, we have the choice. You follow the nafs, you follow the ruh. You follow your lower impulses, you follow what's right. وَهَدَيْنَاهُ النَّجْدَيْنِ, we've guided man to the two paths. Either you go down to what the instinct craves in a particular moment, maybe you break somebody's heart, maybe you do something that's haram or dishonorable, follow gravity, that's easy. Or you follow the path that goes upwards towards the light. And we have to see our days in those terms. There's a bad thing to do, a good thing to do. If you're a student, obviously you can scroll on your phone all day long, or you can do the work which is your duty, which opens up the path to supporting your parents and doing your duty, wajib, what's honorable. Everybody is in the situation at all times. But one of the strange things that we find in his life, again, something that's important for us in our time, is the way in which he had a sensitivity to certain fuyudat, certain spiritual overflowings from the unseen world, which in our very mechanistic, materialistic, spiritually dead time, when people only see things and processes, is difficult. And it's a struggle to understand sometimes in the pages of his biographers exactly what was going on. We know that one of his titles is Al-Uwaisi al-Bukhari. What is that, Uwais? That's not a place. That's Uwais al-Qarni, radiallahu an, who was from Yemen, who heard of the Holy Prophet, who accepted Islam. But when he came to Medina, he received the news that the Holy Prophet had died. But still, he received his istimdad, his spiritual support from the Holy Prophet. So when we say Uwaisi, Uwaisi Mashrab, we talk about somebody who is receiving spiritual graces and help from somebody who is no longer in this world. Now that's a mysterious thing, and it can't really be put down in books. There's no way of defining it, because it's to do with the unseen world, the world of dreams, the world of visions, the world of hidden helping. It's a mystery, but it's a reality. And we know that the Uwaisi Mashrab in his case meant that he had a special connection to Al-Khidr and also to Abdul Khaliq Ujtavani, Qaddasallahu Sirrah, who lived more than 100 years before he did. He's also buried not far from here, Ujtavan. Many of you have been there. Beautiful place. So we say, how is this possible? We know it's very strict in tariqat, that you take the hand of somebody who's taken the hand of somebody who's taken the hand of somebody who's taken the hand of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and through that hand which held the hand, there is this spiritual electricity whose power you feel at the time of bay'ah. If you talk to somebody about how they feel after this bay'at, they will tell you extraordinary things about how they always found they could wake up for the Fajr prayer without an alarm clock. It's just extraordinary. It affects different people in different ways, but it's like turning on the electricity. Put the plug in the wall, but the bay'at is turning on the current. And this has been found to be the case by the great ulama, fuqaha, awliya, Sada of Islam since the earliest times. So this seems to be the rule, the hand.
Okay, we'll stop there. Sorry about that. My computer sometimes has a big problem. I don't know why this happens. All right, we continue with our hadith. The second type of shame is acquired. It is that which is acquired by Allah, knowing His sublimity and His nearness to His slaves. All right, quite from Allah. I don't think it's by Allah, it's from Allah. This is learned, right? This is not natural. Not everybody has naturally feeling some kinds of shame. So we feel the shame because we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that Allah is close to us. That is what it is. His examination of knowing them and his knowledge glorified is he of the eyes, deceit, and what hearts conceal. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we know that Allah knows us, right? And He examines us. His knowledge is beyond anyone's knowledge. And His knowledge of the eyes deceit, that means the eyes could deceive and the hearts conceal, but He knows everything. The Muslim who strives to acquire and obtain the shame will realize within himself the highest qualities of faith and the highest ranks of excellence. Right? So they work hard to know Allah. As I said, this is called ihsan. Right? Ihsan has got two pillars. Right? Ihsan is that you be a slave of Allah as if you see him, even though you don't see him, he sees you. So you strive to attain that and acquire this shame. So you know Allah is always looking on at you. You will never ever want to disobey him, because you feel ashamed to disobey him. So he will realize within himself this highest qualities of faith and the highest ranks of excellence. That's where he goes into muhsin, because he strives to improve himself to the best of the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This shame is brought forth by studying Allah's blessings and sensing one's own inadequacy is being grateful for them. Right? So we look at all the blessings, we realize the good that Allah has given us, for all of us, how many times we are grateful to Allah for being Muslims. Just having the faith in Allah is a great blessing. And knowing that despite our faith in Allah, we are not perfect. We have our shortcomings, and we are grateful to Allah for helping us through, for accepting who we are, for inviting us to go into His audience during our salat. And some of us are fortunate enough to spend our time reading the Quran every day, or listening to the Quran, listening to good talks, and doesn't have in our heart the desire to just while our time away. Our time is well blessed, well used for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And because we have this great gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam Ahmad and At-Tirmizi have related on the authority of Ibn Mas'ud marfu'an, shame before Allah means that you protect your head and what it retains, your stomach and what it contains, and remember death and tribulations. First, you protect your head. That means you don't think things which is nonsense, right? You don't have thoughts of thinking of people. Maybe this person is this person is that, this person is all the bad thoughts of people, bad thoughts of Allah. All this is where you protect yourself. Even that means the shame that's not only right in action, but the shame is also in thought. You feel ashamed that you would ever think of such thing. You feel ashamed that you would think bad of Allah. You have doubts of Allah. You feel ashamed. What irritates your stomach? That means you are very careful to eat the right food. You feel ashamed to eat the food which might be objectionable, which are not proper, which are not good for you, right? So because the food that you eat brings in faith. And just like we remember, we have always cited the story of Imam Ahmad, who will not eat the bread that the son gave him, because he says that he is doubtful of the source of income of his son, for the fact that the son works under the government. And he had at that time some doubts of the way the government gain money, because some of them actually would extort money from people without right. So he considers that money as haram, and so he would not take food bought from the money. So they go on to that. It's not only this chicken is haram, but whether how the chicken is obtained, by what source of money is it obtained. And we have an incident in the story in the life of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. He had a slave. The slave gave him food, and he ate the food, and the slave stopped him and said, "How is it you are not asking me what source of money I use for this food? Where do I get the money to buy this food?" Then Sayyidina Abu Bakr stopped for a while and asked him, "What is the source of money?" And he says, "Oh, I got this food, this money from my previous job in which I was an astrologer." That means I was one who predicts or it's called astrology, does foretell fortune, and to foretell fortunes by the palm reading or whatever way is haram, and the money obtained is haram. So Abu Bakr straight away vomited out the food because he considered that food haram because it is bought from haram money. So that's, and then remember death. Death is for sure to come anytime you're going to die. Ask yourself, how will you be at the time of death? That is why we as Muslims are taught to make du'as every day, to ask Allah to bless us with a good ending, right? And husnul khatimah, husnul means good, khatim is khatam, ending, a good ending. Protect us from su'ul ending, evil ending, as we are aware. Rasulullah SAW has told us the hadith of Rasulullah SAW, translated, that which says that a person would be doing all the acts of a person bound for hell, but just before he is about to for heaven, bound for heaven, just before he was about to enter heaven, he did one act that puts him in hell. And there's a person who does every action that causes him to be sent to hell, but just before he was about to be sent to hell and before he dies, he does an act of good and he goes to heaven. So none of us can be so sure that we're going to go to heaven or hell. If you all have heard the reply made by Habib Umar when he was questioned by an LGBT kind of person, and when this person, he says he's a Muslim and he wants to get close to Allah, but he has this inclination for the others, for the same sex. And he didn't say it, he didn't spell it out, of course. But they said Habib Umar also didn't mention that. But what he mentioned was, because the person was saying, people say to him, you'll go to hell. He says, Habib Umar says, hell or heaven is in the hands of Allah. What is important is the last point where you die. You can be sinning and then you realize you are wrong. So he says, in Islam, there's serious sins, there's big sins, and there's small sins. If you commit big sins, then you have to repent, not do it anymore. But if small sins, yes, you can always redeem the small sins by seeking forgiveness and giving sadaqah and things like that. But at the end of time, what is important is your last time, the last moment of your life, where are you? So you want to keep on being in the good situation. Dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give you husnul khatimah, to protect you from your hearts being diverted. Rabbana la tuzigh qulubana ba'da idh hadaitana. Our Rabb, do not divert our hearts after you have guided us. Because we are aware that at the ends of time, Rasulullah has said, a person will be a Muslim in the morning and a disbeliever in the evening. So we ask, protect from that. And tribulation, all kinds of tribulation will come our way. How do we manage the tribulation? Is the tribulation going to bring us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? See it as happening. Yes, it has happened. How do I move on from this difficulty that I'm facing? So much so that I would get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So all this will allow us to have shame. So it means that you protect your head, your stomach, and remember death and tribulations. And all this will help you to protect yourself from doing harm, and to have some sense of shame in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you know you're going to die and meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? You know, in tribulation, you need to do things that will allow you to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whoever desires a hereafter leaves the embellishment of this world. If you really want wishes for the hereafter, then you will not be bothered with all the decoration, with all the beauties of the world, which are just temptations, which will not last forever. Whoever does that has shame before Allah. So these are the criteria of having shame before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When the human soul is devoid of acquired shame, the heart is devoid of natural shame. So if you can't acquire shame, then you won't have natural shame. Nothing remains to prevent such a person from committing despicable and disgraceful acts. So when you don't have shame, right, if you can't have acquired shame and you don't have a natural shame, then that causes you to move on to do despicable act, indecent act, disgraceful acts. And it becomes like those who have no faith, like the demons among men and jinn. So among men and jinn, there are shaitans. Among men and jinn, those who are inclined to evil and are not interested in doing good, and in fact encourages others to do evil so that they don't look so bad in their evil ways. Shame that is blameworthy. right? When shame restrains the soul from disgraceful acts and other shortcomings, it is praiseworthy. So the shame is that. So there's another kind of shame that is not good. When is a shame not good? So a shame is good only when it stops you from committing disgraceful acts and other shortcomings. Because it is praiseworthy trait for a person to have, because it completes his faith and only brings about goodness. So if you're shame that stops you from these horrible things, then that is goodness in it. As for when shame goes beyond its reasonable bounds and takes a person into disarray and confusion, and his soul withdraws from doing something that one should not be ashamed to do, it is a blameworthy trait. So when shame goes beyond its reasonable bounds and takes a person into disarray and confusion, so that means the shame causes him to be confused, the shame causes him to be disoriented, and his soul withdraws from doing something that one should not be ashamed to do, and he starts doing things which he should not be ashamed to do. That means withdraws. He doesn't do things that he should not be ashamed to do. That means he cannot differentiate between being when to be ashamed and when not to be ashamed. Right? This thing is fine. It's okay. You can do it. You don't have to be ashamed of it to do it. He doesn't do it because he doesn't understand. He feels ashamed to do things which are good also. Like for example, a person has a father who's old. Maybe the father isn't that handsome, and maybe sickly, maybe one of the eyes, maybe squinted or something like that. So he feels ashamed to be walking with his father. Now, is it a good trait or not? Right? Walking with your father, caring for your father, holding your father's hand, right, is something that you should not be ashamed to do. And yet you are ashamed to do it. So that is blameworthy. It is not good. It is because it is misplaced shame, and shyness comes between a person and learning knowledge and obtaining sustenance. Right? So a person is shy to go to learn. Why? People would think I don't know a lot of things. People will look at me as if I don't know how to pray, or I don't know how to, I never learned religion. People think I'm not a religious person, so I don't want to go to learn. Or to obtain sustenance, a person has got no job, right? And he just sits around. Because why? Because if I am going to work there, this place, right, I would be seen as somebody without character, maybe somebody who is lowly. It doesn't suit my position. I'm a graduate, but there's no job for me, for him. But he would not want to go and be a taxi driver, example. He sees taxi driver as a lowly occupation because he's a graduate. So he's ashamed to be a taxi driver, although he has a responsibility to earn money. Some people are like that. So as we said, a man having misplaced shame is weakness. So that is misplaced shame. It's a shame to do good. It's a shame to pray to tell his friends, I'm sorry, I want to go and praise the Lord. It's time to praise. While having maybe a get together with a friend. So it's a shy to do that. Because when it's wajib, but he is ashamed. He feels shy to tell his friend, oh, wait, they will think I'm so pious, or will think this and this and that. So that is weakness. It has been related from the Murasil of Al-Hasan al-Basri that the Prophet ﷺ said there are two set types of shame. One is from faith and the other is weakness. So Allah ﷺ has defined that. There are two types of shame. One is faith. So you feel ashamed to do anything that's wrong, and you feel ashamed not to do things which are right. And the other one is of your weakness of your faith that causes you, your weakness of your own emotions, your own self, the mental weaknesses that cause you to be ashamed to do things which are good. Ibn Rajab al-Hambali said, maybe this was said by Al-Hassan. He was not very sure that it was said from Rasulullah SAW. Likewise, Bushair ibn Ka'ab al-Adawi said to Imran ibn Hussein, we find in certain books that From it, there is tranquility and dignity, and from it, there is weakness. That means when you have certain kinds of shame, you have tranquility and dignity. And from some kinds of shame, then it's a form of weakness. So this is talking about the two kinds of shame. The shame that brings you tranquility and dignity because you are ashamed to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are ashamed to not obey Him, and then there's weakness because you are ashamed for things that you should not be ashamed of. Imran then became angry and said, I relate to you from the messenger of Allah and you contradict it. So by saying that in some books, that means he has some kind of doubt in it. And so Imran is so happy with him because Imran is saying that this is exactly from Rasulullah. How can you contradict? Because Rasulullah has said that there are two forms of shame. One is from faith and the other is weakness. The fact of the matter, as stated by Imran, right, the fact of the matter as by Imran is that shame is praiseworthy in the Prophet's speech and only means a trait that encourages doing good and living that which is disgraceful. So that is what shame is all about. Praiseworthy shame is encouraging to do and being encouraged to do good and living what is disgraceful. As for weakness and incapacity, which would necessitate remissness concerning Allah's right or those of His slaves, this is not shame, but rather weakness and lassitude. That means for those who are not able to do what Allah has him to do or to perform the rights of the slaves of Allah, like for example, to help a poor person, right? It is not shame, but weakness and lassitude. Oh, I think we have stopped here. I don't have that. We will continue that next lesson. All right, we continue on to fussilat. We did verses 16 to 19 in the last lesson. Allah sent on them a furious wind on bad days, and we described the bad days. So Allah made them taste the punishment of disgrace in this lowly life. So this is talking about the people of Ad, right, who were arrogant, who think they are so great for all their achievements on earth, and Allah sent a wind, right, to destroy them, and the punishment of disgrace in this lowly life. Surely the punishment thereafter is more disgracing, and they shall not be helped. So after getting despite being punished on earth, they will still be punished in the next world. And the punishment in the next world is more disgracing, and none can help them. It doesn't mean that the punishment in this world where they experienced, anybody could help them. Nobody could help them also. As for Thamud, Allah guided them, but they chose blindness to guidance. So we talked about Thamud and how they chose blindness to guidance. Thus overtook them the torment of accumulating punishment, chastisement for what they did. So what they did, because they don't want to be guided, they choose evil over guidance, they were punished. Allah saved those who believed and guided. So the people of Nabi Saleh, those who followed Nabi Saleh, were saved. On the day, the enemies of Allah shall be herded to the fire and formed into groups. Talk about enemies of Allah who will be pushed into the fire in groups. They will be entering the fire. We talk about that. So we're going to continue with the next part. Hatta until idama, when that ja'uha, they came to it, shahida, witnessed alayhim, on them, sam'uhum, their hearing, wa absaruhum, and their sight, wa juluduhum, and their skins, bima, with what, kanu, they were ya'malun, doing. Until when they come to it, their eyes and their ears and their skins shall bear witness against them as to what they did. Hatta idha ma ja'uha. The it refers to the hellfire. So when they arrive at the hellfire, shahida alayhim. So it's brought forward. Witness on them, sam'uhum, their hearing, wa absaruhum, their sight, wa juluduhum, their skins, with whatever they used to do or they were doing. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned very different ayahs. The same story, the same idea is brought in different forms, right? We have in Surah Yasin, Allah says, Allah says, Islawha al-yawma bima kuntum takfurun al-yawma nakhtimu ala afwahihim wa tukallimuna aydihim. Right? And on this day we will cover your mouth and your hands will talk, wa tashhadu arjuluhum, and your legs will bear witness. So you see, idea is still the same, right? You will go to hell, you'll burn in hell, and your mouth cannot defend you. You'll be shut your mouth, and your hands will talk, and your legs will talk. So that was hands and legs, right? Basically, your own self will witness against you. So in this particular verse, Allah is saying, will witness against them, is them again. Now, watashhadu arjuluhum, them, not you and them. Allah uses the word them sometimes, right? To cast, it's got a way of denouncing them, right? I don't talk to you anymore. Those people, you know how bad they were. They kind of feel you have and use the word them, right? Will bear witness against them, their own ears, what they hear, their eyes, what they see, and their skin, what they touch, what they do with what Allah has given them. Disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, hatta when they reach the hellfire. Upon their assembly, so we talk about them going to the hellfire, and in groups thrown into the hellfire, right? Upon their assembly, their bodily organs, through divine command, bear witness against them. Their ears bear testimony that they disregarded both the signs of existence which were recurrently heard by them and the Quranic verses heard by them. It doesn't have to be. This is one example. They didn't want to hear all the good things, all the advice people give them. Allah, boring, same thing again and again and again and again. They are afraid, is it? So they don't want to hear. They shut their ears. The people of Quraysh, they close their ears when the Prophet ﷺ starts to talk to them. And we have the story of Tufail, who was told to put cotton buds in his ears, and not to listen to Rasulullah ﷺ, because he says the words are magic words. They're going to possess you. So he did that. But because Tufail was a smart person, he just cannot stop. He says, I am smart enough to differentiate good from bad. I'm going to remove my cotton buds. So he did remove, and he heard the words of the Quran. He listened to the words of the Quran, and he realized these words are divine words. There's no way a man can invent such words, because he himself was a poet, and he knew he can differentiate poetry from something which is really divine, and became Muslim. But these people, they don't want to hear the words of Allah. They like to hear gossips. They like to hear stories which talks nonsense about the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They do not move towards things which will develop them, which will make them grow. They don't take any lessons, but neglected them. Their skins bear witness that they touch unlawful objects. What kind of unlawful objects? Well, of course, men touching woman, right? Which is not halal, right? And this is not right for them to do that without good reason. And of course, when committing sins with the skin, right? Things which are not, and maybe skin touching haram objects like pork and liquor and whatever, right? So the skin will bear witness. This is vital force within bodily organs that everything shall attain to perfection on the day of resurrection. You mentioned about the eyes. The eyes will see things, right? Your eyes right now, some people roving eyes. Allah has instructed, oh, you believers, cast down your gaze. How many of us can cast down our gaze? In fact, watching a movie through with all the harams on the movie, right? We are not casting our gaze, definitely. We are not obeying the instruction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who says, oh, believers, first, this is a very, very important verse in the Quran, in the sense that it is a serious instruction from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specified, oh believing men, cast down your gaze. Oh believing woman, cast down your gaze. So the woman cannot say, sometimes instructions, oh believers. And it is always in the male, male gender. So the woman goes, oh, it doesn't refer to me. But this time around, right, it is specifically believers male, believers female. So you cannot find excuse. So we women looking at movies with men, right, in their maybe macho bodies or whatever. Woman, the men looking at women with all short skirts and and can see all their aurat and everything. You're not casting nowadays. Right? So maybe we should reduce slowly. Can't suddenly drastically change our lifestyle and our ways. But when we realize that this does not benefit us in this world nor in the next one, I mean, as well move away from it, inshallah. Upon the arrival of a human body from the mundane world to the hereafter, all inward deeds and conduct shall be manifest through divine command. And it may justify the secret of the manner of bearing testimony by bodily organs against men. So, as mentioned in Surah Yasin, and Rasulullah SAW, the incident that was related was this man. He came to Rasulullah SAW, and he says, "Ya Rasulullah SAW, I will not take anybody as a witness against me but myself." And Rasulullah smiled so widely that his gums could be seen. And then the verse of the Quran was recited: your legs will witness against you. Your hands will talk. Your hands will talk. Your legs will talk. So you will be a witness against yourself. You will be a witness. Nobody is going to be a witness against you. So that's what it is. We are reminded the ears bear witness to hearing the call to proceed towards truth, but they turned away from it. The eyes bear witness that they saw many signs indicating divine unity, but they failed to believe. Our bodily organs bear witness against their deeds and sins. So we cannot run away from the fact of the things that we do. So we try our very best to do all the good things in this world and be good Muslims, because in the next world, we will be thrown into hellfire and we will bear witness against ourselves. It is mentioned in Ali ibn Ibrahim Umid Tafsir that the verse is concerned with those whose deeds becomes manifest to them, but they deny, saying, we are not aware of such deeds in the least. So he's saying that this will happen when in the next world, Allah will show them their deeds. And no, we never did all those things, or they will be recorded. This is what you did. This is what you did. And then their own organs will bear witness. Then the angels in charge of recording their deeds bear witness that they have committed such acts. So we have angels. Okay, we have ourselves who are witnesses against ourselves. We have the angels who write down our deeds, who will bear witness to our actions. Right? And the angels will come and say this. Imam Sadiq said, they say unto Allah Almighty, Ya Rab, they are your angels and bear witness to your benefit. So this is how rude they will be on that day. Of course, you might say rude, but it could be also you're trying to save their skin. So one of the excuses they have is that they are your friends. Of course, they will say things to make you happy. Like, for example, when you are in court also, right, and your witnesses are your own family members, people will not take them seriously because they are your family members. Of course, they will say things that is good for you. They will not say bad things about you. So this is what the people would actually say. Ya Rab, they are your angels and bear witness to your benefit. They take an oath that they have not committed any of such deeds. So they will do that. They even swear that they never do all these things. Thus, Allah Almighty places the seal of silence on their tongues. Allah will put a scotch tape on their mouth, will seal their mouth so they cannot talk. And their organs, their hands, their legs, their eyes, their nose will talk. And their bodily organs will speak. Any eye, eye, hand, and foot having heard, seen, touched, and proceeded towards unlawful words, sights, objects, directions, bear testimony before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the reality of the next world. Every single organ will say what it will bear testimony against yourself. So that is why when we wash our mouth during wudu, Ya Allah, protect this mouth from saying evil things. Ya Allah, bless this mouth with reciting of the Quran. Bless this mouth, Ya Allah, with zikr of you, Ya Allah. And then when we wash our nose, Ya Allah, protect our nose from smelling the hellfire. Let our nose smell the fragrance of Jannah, Ya Allah. And when we wash our ears, protect these ears, Ya Allah, from hearing things which are evil. Let us hear things which are good for us, Ya Allah. Wash our face. Ya Allah, let this face be the bright faces on the day of Jannah, Ya Allah, in the day of resurrection, Ya Allah, and not make it black on the day of resurrection. Because those good people, their face will be bright and resplendent. And you wash our hands, that this hand do acts that are good, that will bring us to heaven. The right hand, left hand, protect it from doing evil things. Right leg, let this leg go to places which will bring us good in the next world, and protect us from going to places which are bad. Du'as taught by Imam Ghazali. Waqalu, and they said, li juludihim, to their skins, they talk to their skins, lima shahidtum alayna, why you witness against us? Qalu, and the skin will say, they said, antaqana, made us speak. Allah made us speak. Alladhi, the one, antaqa, made speak, kullu shay, everything. Wahuwa khalaqakum, and he created you. Awwala marrah, the first time. Wa ilayhi, and to him turja'un, you will return. So when their skin start to talk, and they say to the skin, why have you borne witness against us? The skin will say, Allah, who makes everything speak, has made us speak. And he created you at first, and to him you shall be brought back. So all these we see are being informed. We are informed now when we are alive. It is recited to us. We are reminded it is of the mercies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah doesn't want us to go to hell. Allah wants us to go to heaven. He reminds us, if you do evil, you will bear witness against you. Why? Because these organs of yours will speak and will remind you that He, Allah, is the one who created you, and you must return to Him. وَقَالُوا لِجُلُودِهِمْ لِمَا شَهِدْتُمْ عَلَيْنَا, and their skins will say, why? And they will say to their skins, why do you bear witness against us? After listening to the testimony of their limbs against them, these people will become hysterical and will censure them for this testimony. You will get angry. Why do you bear witness against us? قَالُوا أَنْطَقَنَا اللَّهُ الَّذِي أَنْطَقَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. Allah has given us the ability to speak, just as He gives speech to everyone, everything that He wishes. The limbs will answer that on that day, everything has been given the faculty of speech. And He who has given this faculty of speech to everything has given them this faculty as well. The purpose of presenting this testimony is that when all the limbs of a person will be given the faculty of speech to reveal all his secrets, then how can the witness and intercession of any other being be beneficial to him? He is his best witness. So when you yourself witness against you, how can anybody come and say, oh, ya Allah is good? No, you yourself say you are bad. How can anybody come and say He is good and bring and try to intercede for you for your evil actions and bring you to heaven? Shy in a thing. It is used in the general sense of the word, which indicates that all the constituent elements of the world shall speak. Even the earth shall speak. Even the earth will bear witness. And that is why we are encouraged to travel the world and pray on every part of the earth, so that that part of earth will bear witness. Ya Allah, she prayed on me. Ya Allah, she prayed on me. So we have so many people bearing witness for us doing good. Of course, doing evil also you'll have witness. The earth will say, she did this sin on me. So burn her, torture her, which may in turn designate disclosure of the inner secrets. So every single thing will tell of the secrets of people. Since nothing shall be concealed at that time, and everything shall manifest its truth and inner secrets. Everything will be seen and heard. وَهُوَ خَلَقَكُمْ أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ. And He is the one, He created you the first time. Remember, who is your creator? Allah is your creator. Allah is your God. We must obey Allah at all times. He is the one who created you originally. To Him is the authority. He is the one you must listen to. There is no escape from His authority. You cannot escape from the powers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, neither at the beginning nor in the end. Wa ilayhi turja'un. Allah reminds us, and to Him you will return. The skin is talking this, saying this, you will return to Allah. So be good, so that when you return, Allah will be happy with you. He is our creator. To Him we will return. This is the reality of our life. If they think that their return would be to their alleged deities, their gods, which they worship, then this is a false notion. Definitely, if you think your gods that you pray to, your idols that you pray to will help you, no way, because you will return to Allah who created you. And the Arabs believe that Allah is their creator. How can they, who have no say in creation and apportioning matters, be the ones to whom people will return and be regarded as their lords? This is referring to the idols that they pray, the devils that they pray to, the jinns that they pray to, the angels they pray to. They have no power with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All right, we'll stop there. Allahumma anta rabbi la ilaha illa anta khalaqtani wa ana abduka wa ana ala ahdika wa wa'dika mastata'tu a'udzu bika min syarri ma sana'tu abu'u laka bi ni'matika 'alayya wa abu'u bi dhanbi faghfir li innahu la yaghfiru dhunuba illa anta. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbana anfa'na bima 'allamtana. Rabbi 'allimna alladhi yanfa'una. Rabbi faqihna wa faqih ahlana wa qarabatin lana fi dinina ma'a ahli al-qutri untha wa dhakar. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wal 'asr. Innal insana lafi khusr ila alladhina amanu wa amilus salihat wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilaik. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilaik. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilaik. Assalamu